Preserving classic Mercedes for the future. I was in Monterey, California in August, and I was in a repair shop that was a fairly well-known classic car garage in Monterey, and I was talking to the mechanic there, Joe. Joe was a good guy too, very knowledgeable, good physical shape. He didn't really have any vices, and so we were talking about 123 series cars, and he goes, "Oh yeah, Monterey taxis," and yeah, in a sense they were, because people there could afford expensive cars, and so they just, they thought nothing of plopping $38,000 down for a 300D sedan, maybe with a leather interior and metallic paint option, and that was that. And so they drove the car for 5 years, and then it went somewhere else. Well, there we go. How do you know when you're working on a future classic? A lot of my beef with a lot of older guys in the industry is they just didn't. And so the way that they fixed these cars was as if they were fixing a Chevy or a Pontiac. They just fixed the car, charged the customer, got it out the door. They didn't care if the fix involved cutting the end off of a transmission line and bridging it with a piece of hose, or they didn't care if the repair involved replacing one piston and putting the engine back together and hoping it ran for another 80,000 miles. That was just, they just had a way of doing things that was very down to business. And I think that this sort of philosophy of these cars aren't future classics, we're not going to recognize them as future classics, is at the core of this sort of throwaway philosophy that we encounter even today with 123 series cars. So these are the myths that I get specifically about older Mercedes, and more specifically about diesels. One, it's okay to part this car out, throw it away, use it for vegetable oil, modify it, etc. Fill in your excuse, because there are plenty of them out there. My response is, go screw yourself. The second question, or the second point that these people tend to bring up, is that this is just an old car and nobody really wanted it anyway, and I'm here doing something great with it. No, the response is incorrect. That is not a good point, because if they're not making something anymore and it's an item that's well made, it must be, or is going to be, valuable to somebody. So my point is, be patient. This is a response that I give to, the third one is something I get from guys who slam and bag their cars all the time. Those guys. Well, it can all be turned back, wrong. It's not easy to turn it back. It's expensive, and you really should be trying to preserve the car instead of making the car fit your vision of what you think the car should be. Get over yourself. The car is actually, I think in some ways it is fair to say that the Mercedes itself, the classic Mercedes, is a work of art and a tour de force of engineering that should be held above a person's preferences and desires, and not worshipped or revered, but respected, in that it is such a great mechanical tour de force. You should be looking at keeping it in the way that the factory had designed it. So, those are the three arguments I get. So if you're a passionate apologist for classic Mercedes, one, if somebody tries to say, oh, this car's not desirable, oh, I think this car's cooler when it's lowered or slammed and bagged, or this car wasn't valuable then, it's not valuable now, remind them, hey, they're not making any more, and if you do have an older Mercedes and you're on the fence about what to do with it, remember that somebody else might also want it and might want to go all the way with it. So don't ruin it because you don't know what else to do with it. Try to give the car a second life and a second home. So I've talked long enough about this topic. Please share your thoughts, and if you have any questions or comments about this, drop them on our wall. I do read them regularly, and like, share, and subscribe. Thanks.